Hello. So, I'm interested in saving humanity and mending the world. And I find that Jesus helps with this. And I only found that out in the last year. But I found my way into this little corner of the internet. People might want to name it different things, but it's some kind of network of people using the internet and interacting with each other. And when I came into this little corner of the internet, I wanted to um, hop in and start working to create, to save humanity and mend the world. And I wasn't ready then, and honestly, I'm not ready now. But I rushed into it and got kicked out of the main, you call it the marketplace or plaza, where all these people come together. I got kicked out of the main little area. You might call it the ecclesia of this little corner of the internet. It's called Bridges of Meaning Discord server. And so the tyrant who controlled this ecclesia, this church, this public meeting space, kicked me out because I was scary. And I I have, there are things about me that make me different, which is scary to people who are different than me. And I completely understand that because I look at people who are different and they scare me. And this is what we're dealing with, really, if we're going to save humanity and mend the world. That's it. But I'm going to play something that Hezi said. So Hezi is a Zionist Jew, and I love Hezi. I wish I knew him better. I'm attracted to Hezi. Maybe that's a better. I'm attracted to Hezi more so than, like, I'm attracted to Hezi and Yosef, two of our Jews in this little corner of the internet, more so than about anyone else. As far as going to someone that I'm willing to learn from, they have a lot to teach, I think. I wish I was able to somehow share information that's valuable with them, but I can't control that. But they can. They definitely are willing and able to share information, which is good for me. And so I'm going to share what Hezi put out in his recent video.
Now, in this way, humanity is actually saved from the hell of uniformity. And now, following this failed attempt in Babel, right? Abraham's mission only starts. It actually begins at this point, and it's not to abolish nations, but rather it's to restore them to their ancient state of families, what they were originally. And to achieve this, an additional nationality, a great nation, must be established. And really, with the purpose of undoing the nationalization of humanity and restoring the familial bonds, as God tells Abraham ultimately, and he promises to him, and all the families of the earth shall be blessed through you. And what he's saying is, and what the meaning is here, that the nation of Israel is really the only legitimate nationality. And unlike other nations, it really aims to mend the world.
There you have it. And so, that sounds to like a patriot, or a nationalist or a highly religious person that's, different. That it can sound scary. Um, it can sound scary because what is Israel? Is Israel a country in the Middle East next to like Palestine and Iran and Lebanon? Like, is that Israel? And so it sounds like Hezi could be kind of like confusing these two. And that's why, a Zionist Jew might be especially scary. And then if you try to look at it through Hezi's eyes, it's easy to understand why you might begin to suspect that the modern uh, the modern government of Israel, which has been called Israel, I think that could be a deception, but I can also see why, if you're raised there, that you would suspect, perhaps even be um, tempted to believe that that government is the nation of Israel, which would bring about the saving humanity and mending the world. That's it. So I guess that I could say that I look at the Jewish culture, the Jewish Orthodox culture, with a lot of ignorance, but also with a lot of hope that they know something important. And maybe they know many things that are important. And my suspicion, my lack of trust, comes from the fact that the government of Israel in modern times is not recruiting me. That's where, like, and there you have it. It's like everybody, all right, done listening to Gavin. But hear me out, right? Israel is an archetype for a government which is able to save humanity and mend the world, which means that that governing structure is able to figure out the human resource problem, which is the problem of hiring, firing, recruiting, promoting, demoting, and getting people organized within a body which functions ideally. And I hate to say, I don't even hate, you and I all have a place within that body. And because the modern government of Israel does not have a place for me, they have not recruited me. And I would say the same thing for the Catholic Church, or the Muslims, or the CIA, or the alien race, whatever, the Illuminati. Because they aren't recruiting me, and they aren't recruiting every person in the world, then I know they are not the Israel archetype. So that's how you will know that the Israel archetype has manifested, is that every human being will be valued, they will be known, and they will be invited to do a thing which gives them the most meaningful life imaginable. It'll be good. It'll be very good. Now, I do think the Jews have something, and they talk about Israel, and it gives me hope. It's something I want. I tried to encourage recently a conversation between a Muslim who is an enemy of the Zionist Jew. I tried to be a mediator between a Zionist Jew and a Muslim who are enemies. Like, I had a lot of anxiety after meeting the Zionist Jew one-on-one and meeting the Muslim, having a pleasant conversation with both. And I had an anxiety because I realized that if I put these two people in the same room within a certain situation, that they might want to kill each other because of their worldviews. And so I had anxiety about that, and so I attempted to try and be a mediator between the two. And what I discovered is that the person, the Zionist Jew, was willing to enter into the conversation, and the Muslim was not. And so to me, that's an indicator. And so I put out an invitation. It's like, to Muslims, it's like, are you willing to enter into a conversation with a Zionist Jew on the topic of the final nation, the archetype, which some would call Israel? I'm sure Muslims would call it something else. And the proper way for that nation to behave. Like, this is the conversation I've been wanting to have for years. It's the conversation, I rushed into it raising my hand and saying, hey, I'm here. There's a place for me here. I have skills and I kind of have an idea of what my place is. And I have been rejected by everybody. And I use that body in terms of like what Chezi was talking about is families. And, eventually I realized that in my wanting, peace on earth, which could also be called saving humanity and mending the world, what I realized is that I needed to figure out peace between my wife and I, and peace for my wife and my children, for my family. And then, maybe that would end up inviting extended family, like my wife's, her family that she grew up in, and then the family I grew up in, and bringing more and more people into a family that functions well and that is at peace, and not only at peace, but is prospering. If I can't do that, then I am being naive and blind to my own weaknesses and inadequacies. So what I've, there's been progress in my family since then, and it's just tiny progress. The conversation I had with my wife this morning was about a situation where I had feelings of frustration, and and there's this problem within the family in which we don't know how to express our feelings. We don't, not only as a lack of communication, but even a lack of facilitating an environment by which, the father, me, can model the way of being. And so me as a father, I'm attempting to encourage a desire for us to prioritize everything properly and facilitate an experience with the father, the mother, and the children by which the father and mother model the right way to process emotions. Something that I know many families don't know how to do. And I would say even Jewish families don't know how to do. And it can be especially difficult for certain kinds of personalities. And I'm not even saying that those personalities are entirely genetic, but personalities emerge which can be more challenging to integrate into a family. And so, we have an individual, we are all individuals, and we have to learn how to process our emotions and integrate that into our lives. But then we are also ideally part of families where we do this as a family, because the strange thing about humans is that these emotions can be contagious. These emotions are very close to the word spirit or pneuma. And I just thought about Mark Lefebvre. It seems that he has criticized people who use a tone of voice like myself. His spirit and my spirit are not integrated into a family, for example. And so there's a conflict. And we have people catching spirits all over the place. You've got, even within this little corner of the internet, you'll end up with biases, assumptions, and feelings of loyalty, and then you'll have spirits moving within one little group or another little group. And these spirits are, a lot of these spirits are really connected to a lack of mending within the individual, and then by extension a contagion that is caught by people that surround that individual. And so you could point at someone like Paul VanderKlay. It's like every time I mention someone's name, could I do a mention, do a at. Paul VanderKlay, he's got a good spirit that I like, but obviously it's not perfect. There's some unclean spirits in there too. And then other people who admire Paul VanderKlay catch his spirit, the good one and the unclean ones. You've got the Mark Lefevre and his spirit, and the Jacob Facciarecci and his spirit, and Chad the Girl Dad and his spirit, and the Grimgriz and his spirit, and you have the Luke Thompson and his spirit, and so many spirits. And so in a way it's like there are families, and not only are there families, but there are dysfunctional families to one degree or another. Functional and dysfunctional. I'd hate to say that. I mean, they're all functioning, right? Like if you looked at these heads, if you look at like this little corner of the internet, and you then look at the decision-making heads that have attracted attention and spirit, there is a functioning within all of them. And then there is a inability to process those emotions and spirits as a whole body. And I see, like, for example, Jacob Facciarecci put out a post. He then accuses Mark Parker as being a psychopath. And it's like what I had mentioned this morning in Jacob Facciarecci's Discord server is that I see Jacob treating Mark Parker the way that he thinks Mark Parker is treating Jacob. Jacob perceives Mark Parker treating him and calling him a psychopath, not directly but indirectly. I think Jacob Facciarecci, that's his experience of Mark Parker's words and actions. And so then Jacob Facciarecci's response is a reflection of that spirit, of that emotion and spirit. And it reminds me of my 4-year-old girl who, I have a 6-year-old and a boy who just turned 9, and my 4-year-old will incorrectly perceive that the older ones, and this is sometimes the older ones are mistreating her, and sometimes the older ones are not. But she has been conditioned to become hyper reactive and to assume that the older ones are mistreating her when they're not. And that's what I perceive with the Jacob Facciarecci response to the Mark Parker I see it in my children. I've seen it in myself. I see it between my wife and I. It's this contagion. It's this transfer of emotion and spirit between people. And, you know, I have 2 books that my company gave me: Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Coleman and Emotional Intelligence 2.0, Travis Bradbury and Jean Greaves. And so my emotional intelligence, they had like some type of 4 squares, and it's been years since I looked at it, but I was good at the self-awareness and terrible at the social awareness. I was good at the self-awareness and self-control and terrible at social awareness and a means of interacting socially. And so it's like we humans have these personalities with these skills, and you get to see it play out in this little corner of the internet. And it would be cool if this little corner of the internet was like a family, and that there was a father and a mother of the family that was able to tend to the children in the family in order to help the children in the family to be able to process spirits and emotions. And, you know, I'm trying to learn how to do that within my family, with my wife and children. And I know from experience that we come from families that were not, that had a certain level of skill, to put it gently. And I would even say a lack of skill. We all have a lack of skill in doing this. And there's a lack of skill in doing it within my home, with my borders and boundaries, my territory, with my wife and children. There's a lack of skill there. We come from homes where there was a lack of skill. And man, I am trying to learn how to lead within my family, within my home, to do these kinds of things that would be good for men and fathers within every home, which would be good for those families to grow, and then families to become connected, to be able to do the same thing, process these spirits and these emotions in ways which are healthy, so that there can be a saving of humanity and mending of the world and worlds. It's a great calling that we are all able to do, able to be a part of. It actually requires all of us. We are all called to be able to process emotions and spirits, clean and unclean. And none of us are good at it. Maybe Hezi is good at it with his family, and maybe Joseph is good at it with his family. I'd love to be able to bring a camera and microphone into their homes and observe their interactions with their families, outside of the bathroom, outside of the bedrooms, but in the living space. I would love to be able to see that, and I'd love to be able to see that for many, and maybe all. So I've had a wild idea of a mind reading instrument, because I know the skill I have at a self-awareness and self-control, and if you could look into my mind, you would get a glimpse at that skill, and it's an important skill. But you'd also get a glimpse at my lack of skill in navigating social situations, understanding what other people are feeling and responding appropriately. And it's a skill I'm trying to cultivate. But, we process emotions as individuals. We also do it as families within homes. And man, all it would take, would be, cameras and mics within homes, within these places where people commune, come together for meals, for eating. Like, what if that became the most popular form of entertainment and one of the most popular areas of study? Maybe it could even become as popular as the talking head Jordan Peterson, or as popular as the throwing the football or kicking the football or putting a basketball through a net. It's like, what if the observing of families, and the best families, the families that are best at processing emotions and spirits, what if those that are the best ended up receiving the most amount of attention? And so, maybe this little corner of the internet is like the beginning of something like that. It's obviously lacking. So yeah, that would be interesting. It would be an interesting meal to see Paul Vanderklay and his wife, and Mark Parker and his wife. I guess he has a wife. Jacob Facciarecci. I would say Hezi and his wife, Yosef and his wife, Michael Sartori and his wife, Chad and his wife, and Grim Grizz. These people that Paul Vanderklay recently pointed towards as, when he says, how can you be a part of this little corner of the internet? It would be cool if the people he pointed towards, was it Nate Heil and his wife, Sherry and her husband, if they could come together for a meal, and there was cameras and microphones on that meal, and maybe that meal lasts for hours, because it's more than a meal. But it's not fast food, it's slow food. So I know my wife and I have been talking about creating a space for people to come eat together. And so, this is, perhaps there could be an opportunity to ship all these people to a space where they can come and eat together 4 hours, maybe 4 hours, in which there was where there were mics and cameras. And that, that would be, I think that would be possible more so than a mic and camera at Hezi's home with his wife and children, or at any one of those people's homes with their families. There could be a Thanksgiving meal. Wouldn't it be cool to have a mic and camera at some of these people's homes for their Thanksgiving meal? I think there'd be a lot to learn for people like myself. Where there is a level of skill at being able to process the spirits and the emotions among the husband and wife, the mother and father, the children, in which the husband and the father, the mother and the wife are attempting to model a way of being which is being received by the children. And it'd be cool to see it intergenerational. Like you could take, for example, Paul Vanderklay's children, or Karen Wong, shout out to her and her husband, could be at this meal. Karen Wong could, it's like, what can it be, an intergenerational transfer of the skill and being able to process emotions and spirits? So, seems really important and relevant to what Hezi's talking about, where there's some type of a vision about where we're heading as humans. that is relevant, supremely relevant, super relevant. Is there a Vervaeke word? A super relevant destination towards which all of humanity is heading, and at the individual level and the social level? And maybe what comes out of it in the end is the capacity that every person finds the most meaningful. They're able to be a part of Israel, right? Every person becomes a member of Israel, and every person feels that their role is meaningful and is of extreme importance, because every person is valued for who they are. I'm not good with tone. For who they are? Can I use more tone in my language? So I have my weaknesses. I'm not the mouthpiece for the body, which is Israel. I'm not the mouthpiece. But I'd let you can, if you made it this far, you go down in the comment section and let me know what you think I am. I've heard things from people who I admire about they've given me words that are strong, powerful spells that they've given to me about my importance. It makes me tear up. It'd be good, so good if we could all do that for every person, or there's someone you respect is able to give you words, cast a spell on you which just fills you up and empowers you and encourages you. I think Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did that in many of his speeches when he was talking to black people and telling them to be proud of being black. And I think it's happening with people who are same-sex attracted. They're being told, be proud of who you are. Don't be ashamed of who you are. But the same call, while Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was saying be proud, he's also saying have love. Do good work in the world. Be proud of who you are and do good in the world. Don't be ashamed of who you are. That feeling of just loving each person and encouraging them, like this is what God wants me to do, and wants this to be happening, and wants everyone to be experiencing. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was able to do that within his family, his community. So, man, God loves y'all so much. God loves you with all your warts. I've got warts right up in here. God loves you with all your warts and your past and the nastiness you've done. Our Creator loves you. And there's something for you to do that's of extreme importance, that's so meaningful and purposeful. It's not that, it might not be the thing you think it is. I thought I would be a mouthpiece, right? I thought that I could do all of that. But there is something for every person that is of extreme importance, that is directly connected to your combination of strengths and weaknesses and history and experience, and you can be integrated, and all of those experiences and all the strengths and weaknesses, they can all be integrated into becoming a beloved member of Israel, of the archetype, which is Israel, which is this vision of a government that accounts for the entire world, where there's no borders, in which exist families that are able to, that consist of individuals, right, that are all able to do these important things. We're all being called to be able to do these important things. I don't understand why the leaders, the people running for president of the United States right now, are not saying stuff like this. I just don't understand it. This is what confuses me. It's like I feel that I'm saying something of extreme importance, but all the cameras and microphones are on people who are not saying things that are of extreme importance. And I've felt that way for a long time. It's why I do the attention-seeking behavior. And that it might be why everybody's doing the attention-seeking behavior. We all, on the inside, have a sense that we are important. It's not that we all. Some of us are plagued and can't see that we are important. But there's many of us who do keep a sense of, we have a sense within us that we are important. And the truth would be that we are all important. And so therefore we are all seeking attention, and the vision of a future Israel without any borders, like a one world government. I know that just triggered Gringos. But that future where there is a peace, where there is a one world government in which there's a diversity of people and families and tribes, whatever words you want to use, all able to be seen and known. Where we don't just numb the pain, but where we learn to embrace the pain and the suffering. That's just a part of life. We embrace it in a healthy way, which facilitates the saving humanity and mending the world within every individual and with all families as a part of a whole. I can see it. I can taste it. It's possible. I believe it's possible. I believe it could happen soon. I can see the ways in which it happens. And it requires that we start sharing this news, this message. It's a good message. At every moment throughout the entire world, there are messages which are good, which should be shared. So hit the share. Comment, like, encourage it to be broadcast by an algorithm. Clip it. I just had the Daft Punk song pop into my head. Do 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 do. Work it. I don't know the lyrics. But I say, clip it, make something. Come on, if you don't think this is like the best news, it's like there's a lot of good news, right? I say that and then I think about Jesus. I can't help it. I can't help it because Jesus, there are, so there are people who are attention seeking, like myself, and then there are people who are lost sheep. And it's like, the people who are lost sheep might just feel so guilty and ashamed and worthless. And the lost sheep, I believe that a relationship with Jesus ends up healing and transforming the lost sheep, the sick, the wicked. And I think that's extremely important. There will not be peace on earth without Jesus, without the one who's able to go, who seeks out the lost sheep and brings them into the flock as a healed, righteous, transformed, seeing person. It's like, how can you mend the world if you're unable to go out and mend the lost sheep? The individuals and the families and the tribes. How can you do that? And I don't see anyone. It's like there needs to be a raising of the banner, and there needs to be some way where people are pointed, the lost sheep are somehow pointed and steered to the people who have the banner and who are being healed and transformed and mended. And that needs to be of extreme importance. Like when I said earlier, I said it's the best message. It's like, that is, it's got to be one of the most important messages, if not the most important message, if we want to save humanity and mend the world, is that there is a way, there is a truth, a life, and a way by which lost, wicked people become transformed and become righteous people. It's like, I just got goosebumps. It's like, I'm just dropping good news, right? Hopefully it's like, it's like, if it's good news, we should be, shouting it. And it's like, it's one of the things that bothers me about this little corner of the internet is that people like Brian, the Roman Catholic, is not shouting the good news about this, about the truth, life, and way by which people are transformed from lost, wicked, blind, broken, into saved and healed. He's not doing that. His intelligence, his IQ, and his ability to think and reason and perceive and call on information is so high, and it's of so importance and is valuable. I'm not saying it's not valuable, but he'll focus on all these things that are so important to him, and he'll be ignoring the lost sheep who can't do what he's doing, right? There is a life, truth, and way that is available to the lost sheep who can't do what Brian, the genius Roman Catholic, does, or Jacob Facciareci, the genius Jew, does, or Hezi, the genius Jew, or Joseph, the genius Jew, or what is it, Michael, the genius Muslim. It's like you've got these high intelligence people just not caring for the fact that there are extremely lost people whose minds can't do what your mind can do, and who are finding the life, truth, and way by which they become healed and transformed. It's like so important. It is that the most intelligent people in the world can ignore, while their mind does all the thinky, talky stuff. When I say there, and I'm remembering, cast the plank out of your own eye. It's like, and this is the long form. I've been going 45 minutes. "45 minutes.